Chapter 17 of the Science of Mind textbook is entitled Mental Equivalence. So let's begin with Ernest Holmes' definition of mental equivalence. It is having a subjective idea of the desired experience. As we bring ourselves to a greater version than the range of our present concepts, we can then induce a greater concept and thereby demonstrate more in our experience. And he also calls mental image subjective likeness, that idea that we create within our own mind. So by subjective likeness, we mean to create a mental version of our desire. And it may be a mental version that is in form. It may be a mental version that delights in the feeling experience of the demonstration. There are thoughts and images for everything we wish to create, because all that is already is here. In the Bible in Romans, the words are, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. A new idea. This is about a process of consciously releasing old ideas of false images, beliefs that we took on years and years ago and have played forward, and replacing them with images of truth, capital T, and life, livingness. Because it is our mind which actually knows these truths, and it is the truth that will set us free to actually experience the beauty and the joy of life. I was speaking with someone recently and talking about all the magnificent ideas that were occurring in this person's life. And they were using the word fortunate, so I will use that word, even though that isn't necessarily the word that I would use. And so the idea came up of, why is it that I am so fortunate? While there are others that work just as hard as I do all around the planet, but they aren't as fortunate. They don't have the good fortune. Well, my answer to that is that it's about our ability to create a greater mental image. I'm going to say that again because that is so valuable. It is about our ability to create a greater mental image than that which we are presently living. So how does that work? Well, let's say that we want a greater experience of peace. We've noticed that we're very stressed out and have a lot of tension and chaos going on in our life. And maybe our past was filled with that turbulence of one sort or another. And so we choose to go to the beach and sit on the beach and experience a greater sense of peace. Well, the only way that the beach is not going to do it for us. That's already a form. What is going to do it for us is that mental image that we create. So as we're sitting there on the beach, enjoying nature, what are we thinking? Are we renewing our mind by feeling, experiencing, thinking about creating a mindset, a mental image of one life as beauty, abundance, tranquility, serenity? Or are we imagining such things as the undertow, the current being so strong, possibly, that it could actually pull us to our death? Or maybe we're imagining the sea life underneath, and then we suddenly have the idea of how many of the creatures underneath there right now are trying to outwit their predators to stay alive. So you see, both of these ideas are present, and it is the one we give our attention to that we're going to grow. And as I'm sure you can see, the one mental image that we are creating in our own mind is not going to shift us into that peace that we say we want. We must do the work of creating the mental image that aligns with the principle of peace, if that's what we desire to experience. So some gentlemen who were really good at this were the Wright Brothers. Their mental equivalent was the airplane they had before their belief turned their mental equivalent into a physical reality. It was the mental image that they played out in their own mind. And I have no idea whether that was a physical plane in their own mind or whether it was the feeling they knew they would have when they experienced it. Doesn't really matter. It's for each one of us to decide whether we're seeing it in form or in feeling, because both of those are very real, a mental image of it. It is the design or pattern around which a new reality will form. And so yes, there are definitely some ingredients for this recipe of mental equivalent. The first one that I always go to is the idea of knowing our God. And I talk about that a lot because I think that no matter where we are on this path of life, to deepen our understanding of what God is and what parts are our personality that we're giving God, which God is not. God is not a personality. God is a principle. God is law, and God is also love. God is both the cause and the effect of life. Both the cause and the effect. Whether we are here to affect anything or not, there will still be causes and effects, because God is all that is. There are also some other ideas. Ernest Holmes, our founder, really talked a lot about Jesus. And he talks about Jesus' idea of faith, conviction, and acceptance as a part of creating the mental equivalent that we desire. Ernest Holmes went so far as to say in this chapter, pray right, and God cannot help responding. And so yes, we do believe that there are ways, I'm not going to say one way, but ways to pray rightly. Faith is a mental attitude. That is one of the ingredients. It's a mental attitude which is so convinced of its idea that nothing can change its mind. It completely accepts what your thought places into it. And any contradiction is both unthinkable and impossible, because you are so clear with the desired effect. In treatment, we conceive of that idea. We don't think of the process. Ours is not to know how we're going to accomplish that mental image. Ours is to know it is. Another person who speaks about mental equivalence is Emmett Fox, author of The Golden Key, and he says that you build a mental equivalent by thinking quietly, constantly, and persistently. He goes so far as to say, think about it a great deal. So whatever it is, it's like that ocean scene again. Whatever it is, if you're wanting that peacefulness, then take in the idea of tranquility and serenity. And if you start to think about is that kid out there getting washed out to sea? Is there a strong undercurrent today? Move your attention right back to that tranquility and the serenity. That's what the lifeguard is for. The lifeguard will take care of that. You probably are not going to be the savior that can take care of that person that's out there. So it's keeping our attention focused and thinking about it a lot. I'm going to finish with one great example that I read about. It was a story about a woman who grew up seeing her parents in an unhappy marriage. And I know that this story will resonate with quite a few of us that are creating wonderful relationships, whether they are a marriage or not. Her story happens to be. And so she was thinking to herself, after watching this for years and years, that she had internalized the idea that being married meant being unfulfilled and unsatisfied. And that was her internal belief system. That was her mental image of what a marriage was. And then she became an adult and started working. And where she worked, there were lots of married couples and couples that seemed really happy. And she'd hear them telling stories about how happy they were. And actually, she noticed that they were talking like they were best friends with their partner. And they seemed real caring and devoted to each other. And so she decided that she was going to experiment. If they were really that happy, she was going to see what that was all about. And she started studying what she calls their vibe. Now really, that was a mental image, but she didn't know it at the time. She started studying what she called their vibe. And later, when she heard the term mental equivalent, she was like, oh my gosh, that's what I did. And in so doing, she was creating a feeling, an idea, a vision of what it looks like, what it feels like, and what it behaves like to be in a happy marriage. And so she now today says that she created her blueprint for her future partner and the marriage of her dreams. And she has it today and has for years. I think that stories like that are really inviting for us to look at whatever it is that we desire to shift in our own life and look for what the mental equivalent of that will be and then vibe it.
It's funny you should say that. There were, and I wasn't going to talk about this, but I will.
Okay.
Years ago, there was a time when I had a dear friend. Her name was Deborah. And we were having challenges. We were having challenges in life, and we were not together at the time. We were just friends, and we would communicate with each other and tell each other our challenges we're having, and give each other advice or give each other insights and stuff like that. I remember her telling me one time, well, make a list of all the ways you could possibly deal with that situation. You could go out and shoot somebody. You could go out and change your career. You could move away to another state. You could do all these possible outcomes, and realize that you have an infinite realm of possibilities. And one of the challenges I was having at the time was in relationship, of course. And I don't know of course, but I was having a challenge in relationship. And so I made a list of the perfect woman for me. And doggone it, that Deborah didn't fit every single box. And I'll let you know that the secret of today is that today, 17 years ago today, I married that beautiful woman. And Jeff, we're sorry you weren't there, but you get to celebrate the 17th anniversary anyway. I quite often think to myself, when I look at life today, and how I used to think, I quite often, this thought comes to my mind of, I can't believe I used to believe that. Or I can't believe I used to think that. And I let those thoughts run my life and control my life, and recognizing that today I have different thoughts running and controlling my life, and it's ever so much more happy and productive. Ernest Holmes says, we erase thought from consciousness by pouring in an opposite thought. This thought meets the other and neutralizes its effect. So when we hold ideas in mind, we don't always just create something that fixes something that's broken. We create something completely new, and that makes that other thing completely obsolete. And so we don't even think about it anymore. So what we're doing is we're creating new circumstances, new conditions in our lives that take over the negative stuff that's not working for us. We don't fix old stuff. We create new stuff and then step into that new reality. and create a new life experience for ourselves. So he says, we erase thought from consciousness by pouring in an opposite thought. What is that which I do wish to experience as opposed to that which I feel like I am experiencing? And that thought meets the other and neutralizes its negative effect. So we have a positive experience in our lives now where we used to have a negative one. That's a mental equivalent. Find that thing that you're having trouble with, and rather than saying, oh God, I'm tired of being poor, make me less poor, or help me pay my bills even though I don't have the money. That's hanging out in the negative concept rather than stepping into the positive. I am rich and abundant. I am one with God, the infinite source of all that is. And so therefore, I have at my access all that is. So there's no such word as poverty associated with me. And so therefore, life is good. I have created a mental equivalent to wipe out the negative stinking thinking that's going in my mind. Erase it and let it go to the nothingness from which it came in the first place. We do not expect to give a treatment today for prosperity, Ernest Holmes says this, and have $1 million tomorrow. But little by little, we can unfold our consciousness through the acquisition of greater and greater mental equivalents until at last we shall be made free. We start where we are, we look to where we want to go, and move in that direction. The Bhagavad Gita says that we shall never arrive at peace while we deal with the pairs of opposites. The pairs of opposites. Dualism, basically, but the idea that seeing where we are and where we wish to be at the same time will get us nowhere. As long as we are concentrating on where we are, we will never get to that place where we would like to be, because half of our consciousness is stuck in a rut, and the other is saying wishful, hopeful feelings about what it would be like to be over there. What we need to do is completely release the conditions of who we are right now and completely accept, embody the essence of what it would be like to be on that side over there. It may take a little time. You may need to gradually, incrementally increase your belief systems until you actually reach that point. But you will eventually reach that point. Ernest Holmes says a man does not suddenly become affluent because he sits around and thinks, I'm a multimillionaire. But when he thinks affluently, he does begin to demonstrate prosperity. And little by little, he will achieve it because it's what he attracts to himself. Louise Hay wrote this wonderful book. Has anybody read this book? This is the book that I will have to say should be on every single metaphysical bookshelf. It is that powerful to me. And it's really pretty small. You can read it very easily in a few hours. But and not a whole lot of writing about philosophical stuff, but she's got this long list in here about if you have this particular ailment or this particular condition, what that means, and then what you should maybe think about to fix that. Well, to create a new one. Okay, so I figured I'd just go through here and randomly and pick out a few. I didn't actually go through and look at this, but I did look at several of them, and I thought, well, I'm just going to go down and look at one and fix and point it out and say, let's do this one. Here's bronchitis, or any spiritual ailment. And the condition that you're experiencing is inflamed family environment, arguments and yelling, sometimes silent. Now, what you'll find that if you have a condition in your life, and you look it up in this book, you're going to say, well, that's not, well, maybe that is. Yeah, I do have that. Oh yeah, okay. That does make sense to me. I am experiencing that. And you're going to find you have a lot of denial around a lot of these things, but then you really think about it, you recognize, oh yeah, I think I do have that. So, the affirmation is, I declare peace and harmony within me and around me, all is well. Now, it's just that simple. You have a condition in your life that's negative, and you're looking for something that's going to erase that thing and create something positive on the other side instead, and so she offers an affirmation. So it's just that simple. 3 columns, that which we're experiencing, that's how it shows up, why it shows up, and then an affirmation to create a new idea. Cataracts. inability to see ahead with joy, a dark future. And the affirmation is, life is eternal and filled with joy. I look forward to every moment. Now these seem pretty simplistic, don't they? And you think, well, it didn't take a whole lot of thought to think about that, really? Well, did it? But when we have issues in our lives, sometimes it's really a challenge to see a way out. And to recognize, there is another positive possibility that I could claim. There is another one. When we're so stuck in the mud, in the rut of the thing that's happening to me that I don't like, it's really hard for me to shift my perspective into something that could be a new idea. That one's pretty similar to what we just talked about. Oh no, I don't like this one, but I'm going to say it anyway. Fat. Overweight. I don't know why this one popped up to me. I don't know. And the condition is oversensitivity. Often represents fear and shows a need for protection. Fear may be a cover for hidden anger and resistance to forgive. Wow. Wow. I've heard that in the past, that fear, that obesity is a sense of having a sense of protective cover around yourself. And so we keep that protective cover there to protect ourselves. And that's all it is. So the affirmation is, I am protected by divine love. I am always safe and secure. I am willing to grow up and take responsibility for my life. I forgive others, and I now create my own life the way I want it to be. I am safe. Wow. I may have to go pin that one up on the wall and then work on my diet. Well, there are a lot of pages of possible conditions that you might experience. I'm going to leave this on the keyboard up here. You can come and look at it later. Or I'm sure we have one around here that you may borrow, but if you don't have this in your library, get it. I love that book, and I use it quite often. At the end of this chapter, Ernest Holmes writes a meditation. And this meditation, you can fill in the blanks, anything that you're possibly experiencing, but it's a way it's a long affirmation that allows good to come into your life. I'm going to read this. You may close your eyes and think of whatever your condition may be, and see if thinking this way may allow you to look for a new possibility to claim as your mental equivalent. I know I am now at the threshold of all good, wisdom, and truth. All the good I can embody is mine now. I have only to open the portals of my soul and accept that which is ready to express through me. I expect fully and emphatically the answer to my prayer today. Right now I do possess this thing I so greatly desire. I remove my fear and lack and negation, for it is the only barrier which stands in the way of my experience of good. I alone can remove it, and I do remove it now. In this moment, my good comes to me, enough and to spare, to give and to share. I can never be exhausted, my good can never be depleted, because that source from which my good comes is inexhaustible. Today, in this moment, the law responds to my thought. My word is one of affirmation, rising from the knowledge that the good, the enduring, and the true are eternalities in my experience. I cannot be apart from that which is my good. My good is assured me by God, the indwelling presence of my life. And so it is.
And I do want to just clarify one thing here in case anybody heard these words wrongly. And that is, I never told him to go shoot someone. What I was telling him was
that's one of those extreme possibilities that we may not choose.
Exactly.
You can't shoot him when he doesn't have a gun.
Well, it's the idea that there are unlimited possibilities, and when we open up to them and actually look at all of them, we will see the extreme ends of those possibilities, not that there's ever really an end, but in our own mind, the mental images we can create, as far as we can go extreme one way or the other, we wouldn't choose those, but it opens us up to realize that there must be a whole lot of possibilities. So it's okay if you haven't come up with what your mental image is yet. Just keep playing with it. You will. Or seek out a practitioner. Sandy, Sarah, Jeannie, David, me.